You tried dozens of bench and jury trials to conclusion in both state and federal courts. What steps do you take to achieve successful outcome in the courtroom?
Well, the most important step that I take is preparation. In every file that I litigate, I think I pride myself on reviewing every scrap of paper personally. So by the time the case goes to trial, there's literally, no stone unturned. That's the effort I make to literally, as I said, review every scrap of paper and to prepare and to be familiar with it and to anticipate, what the evidence and testimony might be. But equally as important to all of that is the ability to adapt. I am a big believer in not sticking to a script because trials are sort of organic things. They evolve as you go through them, and it's my experience that the best lawyers are the ones that are able to adapt most quickly on the fly to the circumstances presented to them. And that's not something you can necessarily prepare for, except to the extent that you can know what sort of tools you might have in your arsenal in terms of the paper that might be available, the document production, the witness testimony, etc. But as much as you can do all of that, there are some circumstances where you will literally just be surprised by something. And the ability to deal with that surprise when it comes is probably the most important thing in my experience. And one of the other most important things that I've found is, oftentimes I'm representing defendants in trials, particularly jury trials. And I make it a point that if my client has done something wrong in that particular case, it may not be fatal to the case, but it is fatal to the case oftentimes if we don't admit it. So I advise clients, to come forward if they've made a mistake or made an error, to be very transparent about that, which I found both courts and juries appreciate greatly. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the greatest lessons that I've learned through my trial experience.
So you don't allow for any Matlock moments, as I call them?
No, I mean, we try to reduce the Matlock moments, but as I said, there are some surprises sometimes, and there are occasionally there's a dramatic piece of testimony or something that nobody really anticipated coming forward. Relatively rare, but every once in a while they creep in.
How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected your clients, and have you had to adapt your practice in any particular ways to deal with those issues?
It's affected my clients tremendously. In terms of my foreclosure practice, it's in many cases stalled that practice because of the state and federal moratorium on foreclosure cases and sometimes client-imposed moratoriums on foreclosure cases. It's effectively put a lot of those cases on pause, except in terms of defending the cases or sort of just keeping them open. And it's affected all the other areas of my practice as well, because, as you know, the courts were closed for a substantial period of time, and there's varying assessments of how much they're functioning, but I think it's safe to say that they're not functioning normally as they were in pre-COVID levels. I just had a trial that was continued from May of 2021, next month, to October of 2022. So obviously that's changed things in terms of how clients deal with these cases. It's changed things in terms of how I assess cases. It's changed things in terms of how receptive clients might be to resolving cases, since they don't have the sort of leverage of a looming trial date or a looming court proceeding, in order to move a case. Some clients, at least, may be more receptive to resolving it without judicial intervention, so to speak. So it's upended everything for me as a lawyer and for my clients. For me as a lawyer, it's completely upended everything because I'm a lawyer that's used to being out almost every day in court on some level. And I've made, maybe 3 or 4 in-person court appearances since March of 2020. most of the appearances have been virtual, and of course the number of the virtual appearances it pales in comparison to what the in-person court appearances was previously. So I found that I was not cut out for a desk job, but that's where we are right now. I spent a lot of time at my desk.
What cases have you gone to court on?
So very early on in COVID, I argued an appeal before the Second Circuit in New York in March of right after COVID struck, but in the very early days. I argued a couple of cases before the Connecticut Appellate Court in person as well. In one case, actually, before the Connecticut Supreme Court in person while they were doing in-person arguments. And I did, just a couple of weeks ago, enter the Hartford Superior Courthouse. I think I was the only non-employee in the courthouse, but I did enter that courthouse.